Let's go to the next page now, page 3. Page 3 should be a review for most of you, but if you have forgotten, it's okay. Okay, we'll go over as if you don't remember, okay? So over here, all the triangle that we'll be dealing with is always right triangle, okay? And then when we have a right triangle, we have names for each side. So if I draw a right triangle now, okay, on the top right corner, 90-degree, right triangle. So depending on which angle you look from, you have names for each one, okay? How about let's just use the picture at the bottom, okay? You can use that space. So like over here, this one, right, you have 3 sides, okay? X, Y, and R. So let's say if you look from angle A, okay? You look from angle A. So you're standing here. So the side that is not touching the angle, right, is this one, the Y, right? This side is not touching the angle. So this side, we call that the opposite. Okay, so Y will be the opposite. And then the X is called the adjacent. And the side that is the longest, or you can say the side that is across from the 90-degree, okay, away from the 90-degree, is called the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is never change, okay? This one is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. Okay, so that's if you are looking from angle A. So remember, opposite is always the first one you find, okay? The one that's not touching the angle. Now suppose you're looking from angle B, okay, the green one. Then where is the opposite? Colin, which one is the opposite?
Would X be the opposite?
Yes, okay, so this time the X will change to opposite because X will be the one that's not touching angle B, right? So you can see that the angle can change. I mean, the side can change names, okay? Hypotenuse is still the same, okay? Hypotenuse will never change. Doesn't matter which angle you look from, okay? And then now the Y will become the adjacent. Okay, so for the green, right? If you look from angle B, the name will be the green letters, okay, green ones. And then looking from A, then the name will be using the red. Okay, so depending on where you look from. So just remember the hypotenuse never change. It's always the same. So based on this, okay, so let's complete the chart. So using the 3 sides, now you know how to name them. You have 3 combinations to make ratios, okay? This top trig ratios, right? Ratio means the ratios of sides. When you write ratio, you can write it as a fraction, okay? For example, you can write it as 2/3, right? That's a fraction, same as 2 to 3, right? That's ratio. Or you can write it as 4/6, they are the same, right? Even though it's multiplied by 2, right? 4/6, same as 2/3. So we always like to leave it in the simplest form, okay? So when you have trig ratio, is the ratio between 2 sides. So one of the combination is the opposite, right here, opposite over hypotenuse, okay? And this combination is called a sine ratio. So for example, like the picture we did at the bottom, you can say sine of A, right? Sine of A is opposite, right? A is the angle. So it's telling us which angle you're looking from, right? Opposite will be the Y. Hypotenuse will be R. Okay? However, if you look from angle B, then the opposite, right, looking for angle B will be x, opposite side. Hypotenuse is still the same, will be x over r. Okay, so you can see even though they are both sine, right, but if you are looking from different angle, then their value is different, right? One is using the y, one is using the x. Okay, now the way to remember it, right, you just use the SOHCAHTOA, the first letter of each one. Sine is S, opposite is O, hypotenuse is H, right? So that's why the SOH. Okay, so similar, cosine is C, is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, so TOA, right? TOA, CH. Okay, so let's write down the three ratios then, okay? So cosine A, tangent A, okay? And then cosine B and tangent B. So when you finish this part, okay, can you raise your hand? Using the letter X, Y, R. If you're looking from A, then you look at the red, okay? If you're looking from B, then you look at the green. Okay, let's start from the angle A first. Okay, Jenny, what's cosine A?
I got x over r.
Okay, thank you. Elaine, what's tangent A?
I got y over x.
Very good, thank you. And cosine B, Jenny? Cosine B, do you have it? Jenny?
I got y over r.
Y over R, okay. And Angela, how about tangent B?
Y over x. Oh, sorry, x over y.
Yeah, X over Y. Okay, looking from the angle B, you need to look at the green, right? Opposite is X, and the adjacent will be the Y. Okay, Brandon and Harry, any questions about these ones? Okay, so these are just getting used to all the names, okay? How to figure out the name of the sides depending on where you look from. Also, one thing very interesting to see is you can see the some of them are repeating, right? The answer are the same. Like sine A is y over r. Cosine B is also y over r, right? So these two are the same. Sine and cosine, right? Same thing with the x over r, right? Cosine A, sine B, they are the same. Okay, so just keep in mind, okay, if it's looking from different angle, then sine, cosine the same. So what that means, okay, so for example is if I have sine of 30 degree, right? That means like over here is 30 degree. That means the other angle will be 60 degree, right? So it should equal to cosine of 60 degree. okay? Because A and B, they should add up to 90, right? Like look at the yellow highlighted one, right? Sine of A is y over r. Cosine of B is also y over r. So they will equal each other when the angles add up to 90 degrees. Okay, so something unique here. Okay, so let's try with numbers this time. So instead of x, y, and r, we are doing the same thing. So please fill in the chart, okay, with all the numbers. Keep it in fractions. Okay, so for example, sine A is 1 over 2. Okay, write it as fraction. So raise your hand when you finish this chart. Okay, can I have Harry? What do you have for cosine A? Harry, what's your answer for A? Cosine A?
Square root 3 over 2.
Thank you, very good. Colin, tangent A?
Tangent A, I did 1 over square root of 3.
Good. And Jiawen, sine B?
Square root 3 over 2.
Yeah. And Jenny, cosine B?
1 over 2.
Over 2. Okay. Ivy, tangent B?
Square root of 3.
Square root of 3. Yeah. Okay. Square root of 3 over 1 is the same. Okay. Last thing I want to do it before we finish the class, okay, is the chart on next page, okay? So the angle we have here is just in the triangle, okay? Now here we want to combine this with the angle in standard position together, right? Remember when we have angles in standard position, we need to have X and Y axis, okay? So we're combining these two ideas and then talk about the angles and ratios in standard position. So two things, right? Angles and ratios, right? Ratios means the opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse, right? Angles means what we did before, angles in standard position. So before was only angle, now we combine with ratio. So what happens to the ratios if we draw them on X and Y axis? How do we tell which one is the opposite, which one is the adjacent, right? If there's a triangle here, it's pretty straightforward, right? You can see which one's opposite right? But what if the angles start to turn in the standard form, right? Then where's the opposite? So the rule here is using the coordinates, okay? So the first one, the adjacent side, it depends on the x coordinate. Opposite side depends on the y coordinate, okay? And the hypotenuse, which is the r, is the Pythagoras, okay, which I'll explain, okay, later with an example. So let's say, for example, here on the left side, I have an initial arm, right? Initial arm is here, initial. And then I have terminal arm, which is, I'll use the blue, right? So the angles turn to here, right? Here's the angle. So let's say I pick a point that is on the terminal arm. So this green dot. So that point could be any number, right? So for example, it could be 2 and then 3. That's one of the example, right? Or it could be 1 and 5, right? The 1 is the x. This one is the y. Okay? So no matter what number you put, in order to stay in the first quadrant, it has to be both positive. Make sense? It has to be both positive to be there. So that's why the adjacent side will be the x value. So this is the adjacent. And then the y value will be the opposite. Now you have the hypotenuse, right? Hypotenuse, you can use something called the Pythagoras theorem. You learn from grade 8, right? If this is x, this is the y, this is the r. Pythagoras tells us a squared, which is x, plus b squared should equal to c squared. Okay, do you remember this part? Pythagoras theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So to find the r, you need to square root it. And because there's a square, right? Square on the x, square on the y, so it guaranteed to be positive, right? Any number after you square, it will become positive. So the y value will always be positive. The R value will always be positive, okay? So this one, hypotenuse, always positive. Okay, so this is if it's in first quadrant, okay? So the sides will depend on the coordinate of the point. So let's go to the first column, okay? Quadrant one, which we already went over, okay? So I'll quickly draw that. So you have a point here. This point is at a positive coordinate. So if we make a triangle, right, this one will be our reference angle. Remember reference angle? So our adjacent side is the x, which is positive, right? Opposite side is the y coordinate, that's also positive. Hypotenuse, always positive. So now we know the sign of the sides, okay? They are all positive. So when we do the sign ratio, okay, the first one is opposite over hypotenuse, right? So opposite is positive, over hypotenuse also positive, so you end up with positive. Okay, so that's if the angles in the first quadrant. And then let's go to the second quadrant, not the second quadrant, the cosine. Cosine is adjacent. Adjacent is positive, right? right here, adjacent, over hypotenuse, so still positive. Okay, and then next one is the tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, so y over x, right? You can just use the letters, okay? Y is positive, x is also positive, so you get positive. So first quadrant, everything is positive, okay? What that means is, for example, if you have sine of 30, it will be positive, right? Because 30 degree is in the first quadrant, okay? Sine of 25, that's also positive, okay? If you type it into the calculator, okay? Cosine of 89, it will be positive. But things will start to change, okay? Once you move on to quadrant 2, okay? If the angle starts to turn bigger, okay? So this time, let's say the angle turns to quadrant 2. So our terminal arm will be here now, okay? So I pick a point on there, right? For the sides to be named, we need to have a right triangle, but we don't have a right triangle here, right? If I try to draw this way, that's not a right triangle. So if you want to get right triangle, you need to draw the triangle differently. So you draw it with the x-axis, and then you look from the reference angle. Okay? So what will be the coordinate of this point then? What's the sign? Anyone? What will be the sign for the x and y for that point?
X is negative and Y is positive.
Yeah, very good, okay? Because it's on the left side, so x will be negative, y will be positive. So that means this time our adjacent will be negative, right? Remember, adjacent is the x, and then y is positive, so opposite will be positive. Hypotenuse, always positive. Okay, any questions so far? So those are the three sides when the angle goes to second quadrant, okay? Now using the three sides, we can start finding the ratio, okay? So the first ratio, y over r, so positive over positive. Cosine is x, which is negative, over r, positive. So you end up with negative. Okay, if you have any questions so far, you gotta let me know, because the next two quadrants, you gotta do it by yourself, okay? Let me know if any point here is not clear. The last ratio is tangent, okay? Tangent is y over x, right? Positive over negative. So you end up with negative. Okay, does anyone have questions so far up to quadrant 2? Okay, so I'll help you out drawing the picture for quadrant 3, and you start complete the rest of the chart, okay? So quadrant 3, it will turn to here, right? That will be quadrant 3. So your terminal arm will be stopping somewhere here, have a point there. So now it's your turn. You think about what are the signs, okay, by yourself. And then if you draw the triangle, it will look like that. Reference angle, once again, should be there. Remember the bow tie, right? Okay, so I'll let you complete the chart. Okay, once you finish the chart of all the signs, then raise your hand, okay? We'll go over the chart. And if you have any question about quadrant 1 and 2, okay, let me know. I can go over again if any step you lost. Okay, and let me draw the picture for quadrant 4 as well. Okay, so angle keep on turning. So here's 90, right? 180, 270. So maybe this is 300 degree. Then your terminal arm will be here. Then your triangle will look like that. Reference angle will be the green dot. Okay. So you think about the coordinate of the point, okay? The sign. Please raise your hand when you finish. Okay, Evan, can you tell me the coordinate for quadrant 3? What's the sign?
I don't know if it's right. I got like negative and negative.
Yeah, negative, negative is correct. Okay.
Alright.
And Angela, what about sine? Sine is what over what?
Sorry, what do you mean by sine?
Yeah, the opposite over hypotenuse, the first ratio.
Oh, sorry. Negative over positive
Yeah,
equals negative.
very good. Okay, Chris, how about cosine? Chris?
Negative over positive equals negative.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and then Jenny, tangent. Jenny,
Is it positive over negative?
tangent
Equal.
is which side over which side?
Tangent is opposite over adjacent.
Yeah, so if you look at the picture, this is opposite, this is adjacent, this is hypotenuse.
Oh, okay. So it would be negative over negative equals positive.
Yeah, okay, because for quadrant 3, both the opposite and adjacent are negative. Okay, last one. Okay, can I have Elaine? What's the coordinate for quadrant 4?
Positive and negative.
Yep, thank you. And Harry, what's the first ratio?
Negative over positive.
Negative over positive equals?
Negative.
Yep, okay. Over positive equal negative. Okay, next one, cosine. Braden? Braden?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Negative over positive equals negative.
We're doing cosine. Cosine is which side over which side?
Adjacent over hypotenuse.
Yeah. Adjacent is this one. Opposite is this one, right? And hypotenuse is here. So which one is adjacent?
Yeah.
Adjacent is positive.
Adjacent is
What is it?
adjacent is positive.
Yeah, adjacent should be positive. This one, the one I circle right now. Okay. Positive over
Negative.
hypotenuse, right? Adjacent
Oh,
over
hypotenuse.
hypotenuse.
Positive.
Yeah, hypotenuse is always positive, okay? Okay, how about you try one more time? What about tangent?
Opposite over adjacent. So negative over positive.
Which is this one over positive will be negative. Okay, so by looking at the chart in general, okay, let's just quickly summarize, okay, because next class, we're going to combine this chart with what we learned before together so we can do the question, okay? This week, we don't have any question on the chart, okay? So just prepare you for the next class. So the pattern that you can see from the chart is in the first quadrant, everyone is positive, right? So katoa, everyone is positive. Second quadrant, only sign is positive, right? You see the yellow highlighted, right? Quadrant 3, only tangent. Everyone else is negative. Quadrant 4, only cosine. Okay, so make sure you highlight those ones. And then we can put it together, okay? On the top right corner, first quadrant, we write down all. All means all positive, okay? And then second quadrant, sign is positive there, okay? And then third quadrant, Evan, which quadrant is positive there?
The last one, the tangent.
Third one. Third one is tangent. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, the last one is the cosine. So the kind of question that I can ask you is, I can say, where is sine positive? Then you will tell me, oh, it's quadrant 1 and 2. Okay. And if I ask you, where is sine negative? Then that must be the place where it's not positive, right? So it will be 3 and 4. Okay, so next week we'll do a little quiz like this at the beginning of class. So each one of you, maybe I'll ask you 2 or 3 questions. So you have to tell me which quadrant, whether it's positive or negative. Okay, so make sure you review this chart as part of your homework, and then I'll see you next week. Okay, so that's all for today. If you have questions, you can stay afterwards. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.